Alrighty, welcome back to Cinema Pursuit. Today we have a legendary guest. If you're
Oh.
listening to the audio version of the podcast, you've just heard his music. What's up, Cole? I'm glad
Hey,
to have you on today, man.
I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
So what do you go by music wise? I call you
Uh,
Cole.
so on Spotify and on YouTube, it's Squoge, which is Squoge, which everybody mispronounces, but that's okay. I know it's a weird word. It makes
It
no
is a weird
sense.
word.
It's not a real
He
word.
has,
I made it
he
up.
has a song about Tom Brady kissing his son, and it's
I do.
hilarious.
I do have that.
But I'm grateful to have you on because I remember just sending you just the idea. I was like, hey, can you make something that sounds like, the mummy and this and put it together? And you understood exactly what I was talking about, man.
Oh, I had such a good time figuring out that song.
But this is Cinema Pursuit, so I got to ask, where did the love for the movies come from for you, Cole?
I've always had, I guess it's a morbid curiosity, especially when it comes to like horror movies. I've loved them from a super young age. And it's never that like they were super scary to me. I think it's really interesting what makes something scary. So I would continuously watch horror movies that were supposed to be good or supposed to be really scary.
Yeah,
And I like that art. I like the art of something being scary.
they have some good ones. I mean, what did you grow up on? Because I was talking about The Village. That was what I saw when I was like, that's not scary. Come on,
I
y'all.
did see The Village super young. Paranormal Activity,
Ooh, good
um,
one.
Paranormal Activity 1, 2, and 3, obviously. Do you consider Jaws a horror movie?
Yeah, of course.
I saw Jaws super young. I would not take a bath for a long time.
Jaws, I've already said it on the podcast, but like Jaws, it went around the world, man. It's still scary. It's still scary to this day.
People ran
I
out
don't,
of the first showing of that movie throwing up from the like head rolling scene.
it's visceral, but it's still like almost PG-13 visceral for the most part. So it's like, I
That's
don't know.
fair.
It's Spielberg. Spielberg knows what he's doing. That's what that is, man.
Spielberg's great.
And I think I saw The Omen. My dad always talks about The Omen, like the
Oh,
OG Omen, like The Omen. Uh,
yeah.
The Exorcist wasn't like we didn't watch too many horror movies, but we definitely watched enough but we watched a lot of action movies, so that's like always where my bread and butter's been, as you know.
Fair. Yeah.
The first
I
time you came to my house, I'm sure you remember this, like 10 plus years ago. We watched
we
Oh
watched
yeah,
we watched the Terminator that one time.
oh yeah, Terminator 2, man. It's
Yeah, it
still
was
the goat,
awesome.
man.
I'll never
But I'm
forget
like, I'm
when
the nerd
we
for that,
when we all went to go see Interstellar.
bro. It's coming back. It's coming to theaters, and we're talking about it in January after we see it again. So it's about to be a godly experience.
God, that movie was insane.
If we can figure it out, I'm gonna make you come down here so we can watch it in IMAX.
Dude. Oh,
Interstellar's amazing, man.
it's way too good. Matthew McConaughey cooked.
But what? Or no, I just watched it again for my friend's commentary podcast. Shout out Pat Brennan. But it's like, ah, the music on that movie is fantastic. I want
Ooh,
to ask
yeah.
you about your music. Like Hans Zimmer's goated for his work, but where did your love for music come from? Because I know your dad also he plays music too.
Yeah, my dad does do music. My love for music came at a super young age. I was always like exposed to music. Both of my parents were fully in love with it. My mother still sings gospel, and my father plays guitar. So I was always around it.
Yeah,
My aunt, she plays multiple instruments. Her husband plays multiple instruments. I think I'm the only person in my family who hasn't learned how to play the piano. I learned how to play
you're
the guitar.
slacking.
Yeah, I know,
You're
I know.
slacking.
I need to do it. I need to catch up. But I was always surrounded by music, and it's always been like a language, less of an an expression of motion.
Yeah.
Where it's I get home, it's been a long day. I just put on headphones, plug that into my amp, and I'm gone for like 2 hours.
That's good. That seems constructive. This is my time for that. Or it's like I just watch stuff. Like last night, I came home and I was like, I gotta write for the pod. I'm gonna go upstairs and like do that, and then probably go to sleep. And then I'm flipping through HBO Max with my dad. And I'm like, oh, Aliens. I'm like, watch Aliens. Like you don't, yeah, I don't think you've seen this one or you don't remember it. Let's watch this. And I went from like, oh, let me watch 20 minutes to watching the entire movie with him.
Damn.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
that's
Aliens is
what
great.
But that's like good movies. It is a horror movie. People are like, oh, it's an action movie. Nope. Aliens is still a horror movie. I was so scared. And
Oh
there's jump
yeah.
scares and everything in that movie, man.
In my opinion, it's technically a slasher, which is, a horror movie.
But see, that's my problem. I don't like too many slashers. I guess
Neither
I
do I.
like slashers in other sorts of like senses. But like, what are your favorite horror movies for you? I got a list of mine. I gotta ring it down, but it's about 10 of them.
Okay. My favorite horror movies, just in general, let's see. Grave Encounters 2 might actually be one of my favorite horror movies to ever exist. Little lesser known title there.
No, I'm literally gonna have to go look it up. That's what it
Um,
is.
the first Paranormal Activity movie specifically,
Yeah.
because of when it came out and how different it was from everything else that was out at the time.
And it's
The
still like iconically like one of the movies that's made the most money back ever. Like
Yeah.
from budget to like how much they made, because it's like $300,000 to like $100 million. Like
They spent
nothing.
nothing on that movie. Nothing.
But that's the reminder that it's like when people are making their first movies, like horror movies are a good place to go because they're quote unquote easier to make. They're not easier to make, but like you got to know
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Because that movie was so different. Everything
And
else had been
creepy.
like, hey, don't go into the scary place in the woods. Hey, don't go into that really scary house that's 5 streets down. This was, I'm sorry, but you live here and it's not okay.
Leave.
Exactly. And you're like, I can't leave. I spent $300,000 on this house.
But that's what The Conjuring is too, right? It's the haunted.
Exactly.
Okay, run down the rest
So,
of your favorites, then we'll get into
um,
Conjuring.
The Ritual, absolutely
Oh,
phenomenal movie.
the 2016 one that's on
Hmm.
Netflix, right?
Hmm.
First, I watched it, and then right afterwards, Guillermo del Toro was like, "Everybody should go watch this movie." I'm like, "Yes, they should go watch this
It's
movie."
good. Hereditary, of course.
Of course, we were for anybody who's listening, we were supposed to do Hereditary, but Zach got COVID, so we're doing The Conjuring instead. Which I'm not complaining. I love this movie.
Oh, The Conjuring's great. The Conjuring, obviously. It's a little lower on the list, but it is in my top. Think of anything else. Oh, honestly, weirdly enough, The Taking of Deborah Logan.
I've heard of that. I've actually heard of
I
that.
did enjoy it. It's kind of cheesy, but I did really enjoy it.
We just did Remember the Titans, and as
Oh,
long as the cheesiness actually works, then it's all good. Like let the vibes roll, man.
hell yeah.
And so for me, I was like, oh, let me make a top five, but I got like a top 10.
I had like a top
So
7, so you're good.
uh The Invisible Man, the new one, the
Ooh.
2021. We're gonna talk about it soon. Like that one I love. Recently rewatched The Thing. Love that one.
Oh,
John Carpenter. The OG Frankenstein. I was like, I
mm.
don't know. I was like, oh, I actually love that movie. Conjuring 1 and 2, gotta be in there.
Oh yeah.
Hereditary, Midsommar. I went with Aliens, obviously, Shaun of the Dead, low comedy,
Mm.
Invasions of the Body Snatchers, Jaws. You're
Ooh,
just
deep
talking about
cut.
Jaws. Let the Right One In. Have you seen that?
Yes,
The OG,
yes. That
right?
movie's great.
They
I
made it.
love that movie.
So the guy who made the Batman and the last two, like Dawn for the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, Matt Reeves,
Oh
he
yeah,
made
yeah,
an
yeah.
English version of it, but the OG is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
And special shout out to Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo.
Oh, honorable mention on my side, Insidious.
Ooh, talking about Insidious, James Wan. He went
James
from
Wan,
he went
baby.
from being the Saw guy to doing Insidious with Patrick Wilson,
Hmm.
Roseburn. Good movie. And then they went to freaking Conjuring, man. Why the Conjuring? What are your memories for the Conjuring? Because the Conjuring, man, unforgettable movie.
So when I was a lot younger, in my friend group, I was the horror guy.
I
People,
think you might still be the horror
I'm
guy,
still
to
the
be
horror
honest.
guy, but I have a lot more friends who are also into horror. So the
That's
only
awesome.
person who I could get to go with me to see horror movies was my dad. So me and my dad would go to see horror movies in theater. And I remember going to see The Conjuring maybe the second night it came out.
That's awesome. Because
And
it
ooh,
had legs. Like it was a movie where it's like people didn't necessarily know what it was gonna be, and then people kept talking about it. But you
yeah.
were on it right away.
Oh yeah. Well, it was James Wan. So,
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know who he was till like after that, or like probably that point. Like I was like, "Oh, who is this guy? What is this?" And then I went back and watched Insidious because
God, Insidious 1 and 2. Ugh. So good.
Nah, I got a fun fact about Insidious later. It's actually like pretty awesome. But see, so I assume you've seen it quite a few times after that first time in the theater,
Oh
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Because for me, we were so in high school, we were communication majors, film majors in high school, and we had editing rooms, right? Little dark rooms with computers where we edit our videos, and we'd have to
Right.
wait to render the videos like through Final Cut Pro.
Ooh.
And while you do that, you have 20, 30 minutes. So it's like, what are we going to do? And one of us thought of like, oh, every time we do that, we should like we always went to YouTube where it's like the clip of in Bad Boys 2 where they're at the door with the kid with Reggie.
Yes, 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 yes.
We've probably seen that like 50 times because every single time it's funny. It's like, oh, someone comes in the room. Let's show them that. Like, ooh, show them this jump scare video with like a bear coming out of nowhere or something like that. But we started watching movies. We watched like someone showed me The Room. Like I did not see the like that room. And then we watched Sinister. We watched The Conjuring.
Oh,
And The Conjuring just blew me. I was like, "What is this?" I was like, "I don't want to." I literally, I was like, "I don't want to watch a horror movie." Like, I didn't know what I wanted, right? And I watched that. I'm like, "Whoa, this is interesting." How do you like? I feel scared for once, and we're sitting in a dark room, and I'm like, I'm getting scared in here. I was getting scared rewatching the movie this week. Like, I look at the corner of a room, and I'm
oh
like,
my gosh. Yeah, I'll talk more
all I
about.
hear is, oh, it's like, nope,
Oh,
nope,
God.
nope, nope.
I'll talk about some of the stuff in the way that that movie's shot at some point, but like, oh,
There's certain movies that are just from the tone and everything that they're doing, the atmosphere of it, that affects you. Some of them, you watch a horror movie, it's like, okay, that was funny, and then you just go on with your life. But this one sticks with you because it puts all the elements together in some extent.
yeah,
And I didn't realize it till now. I was like, oh, this is kind of a detective movie because Ed and Lorraine are kind of the detectives, and they're going into this case, and they're like, oh, they're these world renowned detectives. Essentially, they say
pretty much.
demonologists and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's why I like this movie because I like detective movies. I love Scooby Doo. This is a Scooby Doo in a much more personal sense.
Yeah, it is kind of Scooby Doo when you really look at it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, fair.
For me, that's the thing. Like whenever we like start doing this stuff and thinking about movies, I'm like, oh, I've always liked this sort of stuff since I was a kid. I'm like the OG Scooby Doo, pup named Scooby Doo, the
Oh, a
live
pup
action
named Scooby
Scooby
Doo.
Doo. We Scooby Doo fans.
Oh, what's new, Scooby Doo?
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
watched all the live action ones, even though they're not quote unquote good. But like I
oh, I think
watched
they're
it
great.
all.
I don't care what anybody says. I love
Uh,
Matthew Lillard.
no, no, not those. I'm talking about like they even had like the TV shows.
Oh, you mean
Like
those?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you mean those? Okay. Yeah,
That
no, fair. They're not very good.
that's why I mean, I watch it all. It's Scooby Doo. I mean, might as well check it out, right? Or besides
Yeah,
the new Velma show, I don't want to complain about that.
we can keep a lid on that can of worms.
So let's get into action is the juice then, because the action obviously is the juice, the horror is the juice, the scary is the juice in The Conjuring. So, what are the most juice scenes for you, Cole, in The Conjuring?
My favorite scene, and I think it ties into how well this movie is paced,
Yeah,
is it's relatively early on. It's maybe some spooky stuff has been happening for a little bit, but we've met the family now. We're invested. We know who they are. We know how they're living, and everybody's at school. The dad's out at work, and it's the
bro.
mother and the young daughter. And she's like, "I want to play clap and seek." Clap and seek, in my opinion, is one of the best tools a horror movie has ever had.
Hell, see, when you say that, I'm just like, hell no, nope, nope,
Because
nope.
this entire scene, when she's walking around, and I'll talk about it more later, the way the camera is viewing her, the mother,
Yeah,
while she's walking around this house is eerie. It's scary. And if you listen while she's like saying clap, there's two claps
yeah,
every time. There's every time that they played clap and seek up until this point, each one of them has clapped once.
bro. I didn't even notice that detail. No, no, I'm
I
being
was
serious.
watching it. Yeah, I was watching it last night and going, "Holy, there's two."
So was she clapping or was the
They
monster
both were.
clapping? They were both clapping, bro. Oh my god! It's just she was closer, so she was hearing that. That's
Hmm.
what it was.
Hmm.
And when she goes to man, when she gets into the room with the wardrobe, like on
Hmm.
Andrea's room, and obviously you just see the door opens up, and
Oh,
you just see the hands go. That's the thing. The unknown is always something that's going to be
yes,
compelling, right? And all you just see are little hands come out, and then just you just hear claps. I'm like, bro, what is going on? And it's
that
like there's
scene.
such a tension behind it.
It's and the way those hands come out is so inhuman.
Yeah.
It's nasty. I hate it every time I see it. I'm like, oh no, don't clap.
So I don't know if you know this. This movie has an R rating. Do you know that?
Yeah,
So the movie is only R rated because of how scary it is.
yeah.
There's no blood. I don't remember there
They
being any cursing in the movie.
swear a few times. It's mostly the
But I'm
father. The father swears a lot.
but even then I'm like, there's not a lot of swearing, and they could have easily gone to a
No,
PG-13, but it was just the scare factor. And they're like, yeah, we're not gonna make this movie any less scary.
no.
And it's not that scary in the first place, right? Like you've seen scarier movies than this, right?
Oh, 100%.
But this is like for me, it's like the scene you're talking about. It's like a roller coaster.
It's like you're watching a murder. Something about that scene
Yeah.
is so intrinsically wrong.
Yeah, it feels voyeuristic, like you're experiencing what they're having to experience. And you're talking about the
Yes.
camera stuff. I'll get into that because I noticed something about the camera that is extremely interesting in this movie. And I didn't realize it before, but it's like The Conjuring, James Wan, he's made Saw, he made Insidious, he's made horror movies, but it's like this was a different, little string of like, oh, I can do even better work than you've seen already. That's what it seemed like to me. Because you go from this to freaking Conjuring 2. And where's the camera going? The camera's going everywhere in
Oh, the
Conjuring 2.
Conjuring 2 takes off.
That's why it's like, this movie is like, this is the fundamental. Like, this is good filmmaking with a horror movie. And
Yes.
horror movies inherently involve good filmmaking. And I'm gonna get into it because it's like put some respect on horror movies' names. Because your scene, man, that is still like you could put that on YouTube and just be like, oh my
Yeah.
god, like it just like freak out about it and just be like thrilled by it because these scenes are they're thrilling and I'll be laughing through half of them if I'm awake. Bro, when we watched Hereditary in the theater, me and Ross were laughing so hard in the movie. Like my brother's like he's rolled up in his hoodie, right? Same thing when we saw A Quiet Place, and me and Ross are just laughing because that's like the thrills are there, and the scene you're talking about, the thrills are fantastic.
Yeah. It is. It's so provocative. It's insane.
Every time they go in the basement, man, bro, I hate that. I hate it.
That basement's horrifying. I'll talk more about like this, like the scenery and everything in this movie at some point.
Yeah,
But like, oh
I'm gonna go with two scenes for Action of the Jews. The first one, I'm gonna go in order. The first one is Joey King's character. Do you know who Joey King is? She's the middle daughter with the shorter hair.
yes,
Christine.
she's the shorter hair. She's
She's the
Christine.
she's the leg pull girl. So not the first time the leg pull happens, but the second time the leg pull happens, and you could just see the wire work there, where it's like they yank the crap out of her,
Oh,
right?
and
And
when
she wakes up, and that
mhm,
that whole scene is just on her. It's like okay, you've got like a 10-year-old,
she,
and she's got to play the crap out of that scene, right?
what really gets you about that scene is it makes you want to look closer at what
Yeah,
she's looking at because you're like, there's nothing there, and you're like,
but
but is
is there?
there?
Is
And
there right?
you keep getting closer and closer, and you're like, something's going to jump out at me, and it just doesn't.
No, but you know what happens?
And
You
the door
hear the
closed.
wheezing. I don't know if you had your headphones
Hmm.
on.
Hmm.
You hear the wheezing of like
You
the
hear
dead
breathing.
spirit. Yeah, and that's it. So in Haunting of Hill House, you know this is right. So it's like
Haunting of Hill House.
so anybody listening, if you haven't seen The Haunting of Hill House, it's on Netflix. Go watch it. Mike Flanagan, still one of the best things he's done,
Yeah.
and it's like emotionally, there's a lot of gothic horror in that, like tonally, just like like atmosphere,
Yeah.
and it kind of has the same story of this of it's a haunted house where it's like oh they go to live in the house and something happens with the mother, same sort of base, but it's like they go a whole other different direction with it. And there's an episode where it's like the bent neck lady, bro, one of the
Ooh.
best things I've seen in my life. It's pure
Wow.
cinema, right?
Wow.
And then
Just wow.
And it's like you see people go watch it because like one of my favorite things. I need to rewatch it right now actually for spooky season.
Oh, fair.
But like that scene with Joey King when she's on the bed and she's freaking out, and then Nancy wakes up and she's like, "Oh, like there's something in the corner. There's something in the corner." And the way she's acting, it's like,
Well,
yeah, sometimes like kids they can overact or something, but her emotions are genuine in that scene. They sell it so well,
she's
and
compelling.
on top of that, what like the whole thing of them, like you said, there's nothing behind the door, but there is something behind the door,
And you
and
know it's
every
there.
that's the problem, right? You know, and it's like you know what the game is, right? As a horror fan, and it gets aggressive, and it's like they're talking about like, oh, like the whatever the demons haven't gotten like aggressive yet, right? And then after that,
Right.
what happens, right?
So what's also like so interesting about that scene is we're not viewing that scene as the viewer. We view
We're
that scene as
experiencing it
Christine's
as
sister,
yeah.
and that's genius.
Oh, actually, you're right. So at first, when she wakes up, she goes under the bed. And when she goes under the bed, the camera literally is upside down. So we're in the perspective of Christine, like Joey King's character. And then when she comes up, the camera literally flips when it comes back
Mhm.
up. And then it cuts to the other side when Nancy wakes up and puts on her glasses and she's looking in the corner. And then everybody else rushes in the room. There's nothing there. And obviously, at the end, she's like, they want to. They said that they want my
They want
family
my
dead.
family
As
dead. Oh, visceral. I
it's
love it.
that's like that's Sidwell right there. It's like that's emotionally like you got to sell that as hard as you got to sell a drama. It's harder to do this. It's harder to do comedy than it is to do drama, in my opinion,
I agree.
because you can do drama, but it's like this. This is much harder. This is so much harder to do because this is like how do you emotionally tell someone that you're scared, right? How
Right.
much emotion do you have to build up to be scared? And that's just masterclass work right there from Joey King. My second scene is you're talking about the scene. It's always the scenes with the mom in this movie, but it's
Yeah.
like the hiding clap. But then the other scene of her going down to the basement when the door opens, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, woman, leave.
She-
I'm like, woman, live outside in a tent because that would be better than anything else you could do. And that movie freaks me out because what happens? She goes down there and then the ball gets thrown, right? She's trying
God.
to get out, and then the filament in the bulb literally just blows, and then she's running up the stairs. The lights go out. She gets. Then you remember, like he shows one shot of the dad putting the box of matches on the step. So it's
Hmm.
like you
Hmm.
remember, right?
Hmm.
So it's like you come back to it. She picks up the match, and I'm just like, okay, here we go. And then what happens? The hands come out, and then she get the claps, and
Oh.
then you cut to the outside and the door is just shaking. You can just feel the door shaking in your soul. And they're like, it's like a Dutch angle pulling back. And it's just, and then we get upstairs, right? And what happens? Mackenzie Foy, Cindy, the second youngest
Cindy, the
daughter.
second youngest daughter.
Yeah, Mackenzie Foy, the one that's in Interstellar. She's the one who's in Interstellar, man.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then Joey King, she's the one she's in The Dark Knight Rises as Talia al Ghul at the end of the movie
Oh.
in a flashback. Yeah, both of them popped off right after this. But it's like when she's sleepwalking again, banging her head, and then Andrea gets out of bed. It's like, oh, you can come sleep with me. It's like, oh, big sister's being nice tonight, right? And then she gets back to the bed. Bro, okay, not even the woman on the wardrobe. When Mackenzie gets up, you know how she gets up? It's like unnatural how she
Oh,
gets
yeah.
up.
She does
Yeah,
the exorcist sit up.
I was just like, bro, I was like, the core's working out today.
Honestly, if I were to go with another scene with, and I feel like people don't talk about this scene enough, and it's amazing narratively, is when Lorraine is outside hanging laundry.
Bro, yes, yes, yeah. Actually, that's a production value thing right there. I'm gonna drop you right in.
All right,
Talking
okay,
about
okay.
production value. Production value!
Production value.
Production value. Whether it's a scene, moment, aspect of this movie, what screams production value for you? Because the scene you're talking about with the laundry is fantastic.
Yes, but that's not my production value
Oh, you can talk
moment.
about anything with production value. There's so
So,
much production value in this movie,
in
but
my
like,
opinion, the
yeah,
the biggest thing in production about this movie is the way it is shot. There
yeah,
are two different ways this movie is shot. in
Yeah.
the movie. There are two different perspectives. There are the people and there are the ghosts. And every time we're in the perspective of the ghosts, these camera angles are predatory. They're
Yeah.
scary. You feel like you're stalking these characters. It's ingenious. It makes me feel icky. Like it's it's got a certain feel to it where you're like, I feel like I should not be seeing this.
And the thing is that the camera itself, so when it comes to cameras, you have different like lenses you can put on a camera.
Right.
And this has a lot of wide lenses, like the one you're looking at right now with me in it. This is a wide lens, so you can see my head, you can see everything around me, you can see my whole background. You know, there's a lot of information in the
Mm-hmm.
screen. And then some other camera, like other lenses, they get smaller and you can get closer and you fill up more of the frame with a person, right? But this movie always plays in white, right? And that's why you always see the at like the whole house. Like they made a distinct choice to use wider lenses all the time, so they can see the room, you can see the basement, you can see the rest of the house. So every time they're walking around and you're following them, you get to see and experience what they're doing. And it's a shot lens too, because there's not a lot of cutting. When it gets scary, we're
Mm-hmm.
just following people. We're following them. And then it'll be, whatever happens in those scenes where it's like you talk about the clap scene. There's the shots are so long because you follow her into the room and all you see is the thing come behind, like from behind. You see the hands come out, they clap, and she's in the foreground, like in the front, and you can see her with the blindfold, and that's all you see. You see the tension playing out, but there's no cutting. Other movies,
Mm-hmm.
they'll cut it up and they'll try to use the edits to build the tension. They're
Right.
building the tension right there in the moment, and that's harder to do. That's production value when it comes to these movies, man.
And the way that they move the camera around this house when people are talking, when people are walking around, makes this house feel like a maze.
True. But it's like it's a maze. It's creepy, but it's like you
Yes.
also like so when they come into the house for the first time, when Cindy, Mackenzie Foy's character, she comes inside, she's like, "Oh, where's my wind chime?" The shot stops outside and you
Mm-hmm.
see the moving vans and all that. She runs inside past everybody. She finds the wind chime, then she runs out the house. But what it does at the same time, you're following her, but subconsciously, you're learning the
You're
geography of the
memorizing this
house.
house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whether you want to or not, that's what he's doing. So it's like when he comes back later, because she runs outside and then it cuts to the tree outside too, right? And you get to see the tree.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think is one of the more masterful things about this movie is it does a really good job at getting you comfortable with these people and this place that they're living really quickly,
That's true
and
because
then it takes it away from you.
it's like they give you a moment of comfortability where it's like you might not know these kids, you might not know these parents, but they're extremely relatable. And most horror movies have relatable characters in that sense, where it's like they're not typically, people that have different jobs. It's not like an astronaut. It's not
Yeah.
someone with $1 billion or something like that. Even though you can make horror movies like that and they're compelling, the most compelling ones are the simple ones like this. You're talking about Paranormal Activity, right? It's
Yeah.
just a house. You talk about the opening of Saw, right? Or like all those characters just random people. It's like, bro, why do I got to play a game today? Like, I don't want to play a game.
I want to play a game today. That's funny.
You want to play a game? I should just go through all the horror movie like the little sounds. Here's Johnny. Nope.
Oh my god.
But
Your
okay,
mother sucks hell.
bro, bro, bro. I turned on. So I was at Ross's house, and the Exorcist was on. We turned it on, and it is that scene. And literally, she turns around, she says that, and I just flipped the channel. I'm like, nope, we're not watching this
So
right now.
so immediate.
I was just like, okay. And that no, The Exorcist is still such a freaky movie. Will Friedkin. I'll talk to you about him afterwards, but like creepy movie. What my
Oh.
thing, so production value, I do want to bring
Mhm.
up what you're talking about is that scene where she's putting the clothes up outside on the
Yeah.
clothes, and it gets windy, and as soon as the wind comes by, whatever, a sheet gets loose, and it stops on something. It stops on a human, and then it just hits the house and then goes away. And the production value of that is that it is a CG sheet.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's
I
a
didn't know
CG
that.
sheet.
That's insane.
And that's why it's like, and that's the use people talk about CGI. That's a good use of CGI, where it's like you see the sheet hit the person, then it hits up there on the house, and then it just moves to the left, and you can't even tell it was CGI.
Did
That's
you
beauty.
did you notice what that scene is about?
No.
So when the sheet hits that figure and
Yeah.
it hits the window and the sheet
Yeah.
leaves, there's a person standing in the window.
Bro, I
Bathsheba.
didn't see the person at the window. I'm too busy. I
I say
rewinded
yeah,
it. I watched the sheet again.
it's Bathsheba. She stands in the window, walks away, and right after that is when she possesses the mom.
Oh, bro.
That sheet leads to the mom's window.
Geography. This is what that's what I'm talking about. See that's my problem. I'm like, oh, filmmaker. That's like, okay, geography. But that is genius, man. I didn't even
Uh-huh.
think of that.
Horrifying. Absolutely.
And for me, the production value really, when it comes to a horror movie, you want to talk about production value, these movies are all production value. Because
Yeah.
production design. This movie, you go back to Amity Horville, right? 79. Josh
Mhm.
Brolin. Or James Brolin, not Josh Brolin. That's the dad. Okay. But it's like, that's a haunted horror movie. Like, you go all the way to, like, that's the first one. You have so many through, like, the 80s and all that. You have Monster House, even for the animated ones,
Oh,
as a kid.
I love
Fantastic.
Monster House.
That was awesome. I need to rewatch it, but I love watching that one in the theaters. But there's a lot of haunted horror movies in haunted houses, quote unquote haunted houses, are like, oh, like we're locked in this house, or like you said, we bought this house, we can't literally leave. We
Yeah,
have
we
to
have
be in this
nowhere else
house.
to go.
And this movie caused a resurgence of that genre, that subgenre. But
Yeah.
this movie itself, the production design on the house, I was talking about the basement. I'm like, you go in the basement, it's just the basement, but it's like everything that they do, the little pieces of every little detail, it brings it alive.
Yeah.
And then the plaster on the wall, like it's a 70s house, but like how the plaster just looks disgusting. It looks so scary to
It's
me.
all
I'm like,
cracked up and everything. Yeah.
and I was just like, in all the colors in the house, it's very yellow,
It's
right?
extremely yellow.
Is
It
yellow, brown. It feels dirty, grimy. It feels disgusting, and that's the whole point, is to make you feel disgusting.
yes. Which is it's funny because in some of the earlier shots, the lighting and some of that stuff seems to make the house look a bit more vibrant while
Yeah,
the family is doing family stuff, while they're being sweet, while we're having our calm moments before everything goes really bad.
so bad.
Um and it seems like they're using more of like a blue scale when it comes to lighting up against the, like these yellows and everything, and it brings more life in. And then the more things go bad and worse, the more the colors in this movie change, and
Bro.
it's really interesting.
And by the end of the movie, they're straight up they're just in the attic, right? I mean, in the basement,
Mhm.
and it's just dark. It's just the light in the
Fully
dark,
dark.
and it very much, that's that scene when she actually is getting the exorcism. That's the main production value scene right there. Because every single thing, whether it's him trying to give the exorcism, or the Bathsheba taking her upside down and all that sort of stuff, the blood coming out, like every single detail, the sound, the music, the cinematography, everything is being shown in the exorcism. And the acting, Lily Taylor, the mom, bruh, the acting. I was like,
So
how have I never seen this lady in anything else? I like she's in smaller roles, but like this is like the
yeah, that's
biggest thing
fair.
she's been in, like in terms of like a lead role.
Also, speaking of acting in that scene, Patrick Wilson, Ed Warren, the way he stutters while speaking Latin is the most organic way I've ever heard anybody stutter speaking another language. It is the most believable thing. 'Cause you're like, this man's horrified.
Yeah. And I love the
That's
narrative
awesome.
element of it too, where it's like they're setting it up before. It's like, oh, we have to get confirmation, we have to get authorization
Which is a real
from
thing.
from the Vatican. We have to do all this, and then we can do it. But I can't do it. And he says it twice, I think, where it's like, "Oh, I've assisted on
Yes,
exorcism. I've assisted on
I've
exorcism." Like,
assisted. I'm not ordained.
and now he has to do it. He has no choice but to do it, or else Bathsheba, the mom,
Is
possession
is
is
gonna
literally
kill
gonna
her
kill the
kids,
kids. And bro, and bro, that basement freaks me out. Even
dude. The
when
basement's horrifying.
when Lorraine, she picks up the rope in the middle, like behind the
Oh, when
wardrobe,
she
and
falls
she
through the floor,
drops through, and I'm like, oh, this is the peak into like Conjuring 2 right here.
that the scene with Bathsheba still just like floating above the
Yeah,
floor with just her feet. Oh my god! the fact that like you weren't able to you saw nothing of her up to that point except for her feet.
Feet, yep. And that's the thing is like what you show and what you don't show. I think he does it a little bit more in Insidious, where it's like the Hitchcock elements are kind of there
Insidious
in
is pretty in your
Insidious more.
face.
Yeah, but then when it gets in your face, it gets in your face.
Oh yeah.
And pro, and I mean, I like this a little bit more than Insidious, but Insidious has the juice, and it's still that same family sort of story, and
Yeah.
it's intense. It is really intense.
Insidious is interesting because it's more like nuclear family based, whereas this is
True.
like this is your like you're like, oh, this is a nice little quirky family.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to add just the little details of like all the horror stuff, like the little gags of like, oh, this doesn't take a lot of money to do, but like the effect of it, horror wise, to like horrify your audience is fantastic.
Yeah.
First one is this: it's the moment of all the on the staircase where all the pictures are just crashing down. That's one. One
That's
of the
so
other
loud.
3:07 a.m. on the clocks, genius.
Ye-
That that is a plot device, right?
yes.
It is fantastic. The wheezing, easy thing to do the sound, and that's applied so well when the tape thing happens, right? When they're playing back the
Oh,
tape, and they
that
goes, oh,
tape makes my skin crawl every
and then
time I
she's
hear
like,
it.
he's like, oh, I didn't hear anything, like nothing happened, and then the tape starts playing by itself, and all you hear is, and I'm like, no.
Also, the really good plot device to where Lorraine didn't start having really effed up visions about this spirit until she lost the necklace her daughter gave her in the basement.
Yeah, yeah. And the way that the when the ghost is like pulling it off of her, bro, horrifying. That is so good. And just the way that they set it up of like it's just hanging there afterwards and like, oh, this is gonna come back, we're gonna like, he has a lot of like insert shots of like things like that, or the matches where it's like,
The
oh,
matches is such a good like
it sounds so stupid to say, but it's like it's the fundamental of like, okay, we're gonna use an entire shot and we're gonna show you this one thing because it needs to come back. I, it's a rule in cinema where it's like, if you're gonna, it's like a Chekhov's gun. If you're gonna
Chekhov's gun.
show the gun, you better bring the gun back, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, if you show the box of matches in a full shot, that box of matches better come back. And like I said, I was watching Aliens last night, and every single little thing you see in that movie, in terms of horror, where it's like, okay, we're setting this up, this this has to come back, right? Or it's like at the end of the movie in Aliens, the mother alien comes out, and we're like, oh, we didn't see the mother alien explode or anything. It's like, nope, it's because the mother alien literally detaches, and she's like, I'm going after them, and it's like, it is so horrifying, bro, and man. Oh, and the last one I wanted to bring up was Nancy getting yanked with the hair afterwards, like
Ooh,
before
that's
the
good.
exorcism happens, when they get trying to get it
And she gets
authorized.
thrown into that window.
And I'm just, oh yeah, and that's the thing. I'm like, that's the production value of like, you have your wire work, you have your stunt actors. There's so much planning that goes in with that because you also have to do like the found footage thing, where it's like
Hmm.
we have to record this, and it looks so good.
It looks
I'm
great.
like, the best part for me was that Lorraine had the classic shear scissors ready. She's like, "Oh, this has happened before," and she goes and cuts off her hair because
Hmm.
that's the only way to get them to let go. And there's so many details in this movie where it's like they show the room in the house that let Ed and Lorraine have, where it's like we have all these things,
Oh yeah.
and you see the history at the end of the movie. One of my favorite details is that they put the box on the shelf and then they close the door. So it's like, if that one box had this much problem, this much story, how much stuff have they done over the years? And I'm
Yeah,
not talking about like the real Ed and Lorraine. I'm not. I
right.
don't even want to get into that. But like, just as a story, as like detectives, as like demonologists, it is so good.
Their house is so lived in when every time they show it in those movies.
See, that's the thing. That's production value, man.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you have you seen Prisoners with Denis Villeneuve, Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman, where the kids get kidnapped?
I may have seen bits and pieces of it. I don't think I've seen it
Okay,
fully.
nah, you gotta watch it. But
Okay.
there's so, or Jake Gyllenhaal was talking about how like he'll just open a drawer in the room, like in his desk as a detective, and there'll just be papers in there with a case file and all this sort of stuff, or there'll be pens and there's all sorts of little details put in there. He didn't ask for that; they just did that,
That's
and
so
it's like,
sick.
you want to have people who care about the details enough for that, where it's like, oh, like if you want to really act, then you got the space to do it.
Right.
And you're talking about it's lived in, it feels lived in. And we get a few good scenes of Juice in the house itself, of, with the daughter and all that sort of stuff. Oh, that's scary too with Judy, bro.
Judy goes through it.
Judy got PTSD. Everybody got PTSD in this movie. Everybody got PTSD in this movie.
Can we talk
Ed
about
might be,
just for
Ed
like
might be the only person who might not.
just for like a quick second? Can we talk about how much of a Giga Chad their father is this entire movie?
Like who? Are you talking about Ed or the other guy?
The Rajan, what's his name?
Roger.
Roger. She calls him Raj. That's what
Yeah.
she calls him. Okay. But
Raj. That's
Roger,
like an Indian name. He's Raj. Raj is actually an Indian name.
but like he's just a Giga Chad this entire movie. He plays
Bro, when
such
he
a
shows up,
good
when he
straight
shows,
man.
yeah, but like when he shows up, I'm like, oh, of course he's going away for a week to like freaking Florida, and then his wife is in the basement. His kids are freaking out upstairs because there's a lady on top of her screaming, and I'm like, this is crazy.
This he's such a good straight man, which I think a lot of horror movies need. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily a character that's doesn't believe in the paranormal or is scared of it. It's a character who can't allow themselves to be, because he's the dad. He's
Hmm.
not supposed to be scared, and I see that in his character a lot, where he's constantly double taking, where he
Yeah.
sees something really scary and goes, "Mm," and then just gets mad instead of scared.
My favorite detail of that is when the mom, she looks at she's like in the bathroom, like taking a shower, like after a shower. She like looks in the mirror and she sees the bruises, and then she takes some pills, and the pills that she's taking are iron supplements because she
Yeah.
thinks that she's having a problem because her husband told her like, oh, go get it checked out, right? You're talking about him,
Uh-huh.
not believing it. It's like, oh, go to the doctor because of those bruises, and the bruises are obviously from the demons, but like her just taking the iron pills, like, oh, this is probably just a medical problem. Like, bro, that ain't no medical problem. That's a 666 Satan, pentagram problem right there. I do. There's almost like a science fiction-y thing to all this, where it's like there's a lot of details that they explain in this
Yeah.
movie. Where it's like, if you want to show someone a good horror movie for a first time, like a gateway horror movie, this is the movie to show them. It's like, oh, if you like
Oh,
this,
100%.
there's a lot more niches of like certain horror movies that do certain aspects of this movie extremely well, but this movie does a lot of those things across the board extremely well. So this is
Yeah.
the one you show them first, and then they can go get freakier.
It's this movie is the epitome of like the outside of a found footage movie.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so interesting to watch that this could have been a found footage movie.
This
But
is it almost feels the way that they shoot the movie, it feels almost nonfiction, where it's like it's not a documentary, but it's like I said, it's
but
almost voyeuristic, where it's like you're in the room experiencing it with them,
yes,
rather than, if okay, compared to like Malignant, where it's like you're not necessarily experiencing it with them, like you're watching them experience this.
exactly. You're like, oh, I'm not there. I'm watching these people go through this thing. When you're there, you're like, I'm a part of this family.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you're not invested within the family,
And
then the whole
that's why
movie
the
doesn't work.
beginning of this movie works so well.
No, you're 100% right. I was watching, when we watched Die Hard, I had mentioned it before, but I didn't realize it. Like, I love Die Hard. I've seen Die Hard 10, 15, 20 times. But I didn't realize it till we did the pod last year in December, that I was like, oh, my favorite scene, my action, the juice scene, is the scene where Holly and McClane, they're talking in the office, they're arguing before everything happens. If you don't have that argument in the scene where you're like invested with him trying to like figure out his family situation,
Hmm.
then you're not going to care about the rest of the movie. And people don't understand that when it comes to, I wouldn't say just horror movies, but I say action movies, like a lot of movies where it's like, it seems just logical. It's like, oh, you want to make people care about your characters. Like, it seems like, how hard can that be? But it's like some people, they can't find genuine ways of doing that. Some people
Hmm.
do it, and it doesn't feel authentic in some ways. Did you watch The Creator with
No, I haven't
so?
seen that one.
But you know what I'm talking about. Like
Hmm.
they try to do like a flashbacky type thing where they're like, it's like kind of like Gladiator, where they're like, oh, showing him with like his wife and she's dead now and all this stuff. And it's like
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, I've seen this before, but like something, the juice is off here. I couldn't even put my finger on it. but it's like you can, like when you're an audience, you can kind of just tell what's going on, and it's like you don't have to have some film degree or something like that to tell
What's
something's working or not working.
what lends itself more to that is this movie's really good at not giving the audience more details than the people in the movie know.
Yeah, it's like we're uncovering things as they go along.
Which is why it feels like we're there and we're with them.
Otherwise, besides knowing that, like, yeah, this is a creepy movie, that's all we know, right?
Yeah.
And that's the only pretense that we have is like we know something's gonna go wrong. We don't know what's gonna go wrong, but something's gonna go wrong.
And the way this movie's paced, it's so good at subverting when you think things are going to go wrong.
Yeah,
Because it
that's true.
happens the way this movie's paced. And it goes, good stuff, a little bit of bad stuff, good stuff, a little bit more bad stuff, less good stuff, kind of worse stuff. Everything's really bad right now. And it's this back and forth between the two, and it's juxtaposing until it's like, all right, we're gonna get there. Everything's gonna be okay. Never mind.
And then by the time you get to the exorcism, then it's like full bad.
Mhm.
Like literally, she's got a knife to her kid. Like
Yeah.
by the end of the movie, right? And it's like, bro,
Because everything's
like-
going fine. They're outside the house. The
Yeah.
Lorraines have talked to the priest. The priest is down. He's talking to
Yeah.
the Vatican. And we cut to the father coming back with groceries, being a good dad. And they're like, Mom's gone.
car.
She took the car and the kids, and I think she had big scissors. We're kind of scared.
And that's why that reminded me of Hill House a little bit, because like with the whole hotel thing and all that, I was like, bro,
Mhm.
okay. And I was just like, I wonder, I assume like a little bit of the adaptation that Mike Flanagan did. He definitely obviously saw Sinister. I mean, not Sinister,
Or-
but I'm thinking about, I think about Sinister at the same time because I saw both of them pretty close to each other.
Hill House is a remake of that movie with Owen Wilson, right? Hunting at the House on the Hill.
They're both adapted from the same thing. It's
a book. Yeah.
Agatha Christie. Yeah. No,
Okay.
no, it's not Agatha Christie. This is gonna bug me. Hold on,
Just a little mid podcast search session.
bro. I can cut it out if I need to.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Shirley Jackson. That's who it is.
Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, it's a Shirley Jackson book.
Okay.
And she was a prolific writer when it came to like mystery work and horror work. And that's my favorite stuff, where it's like where you're kind of thinking about it and you're trying to figure out the situation with them.
Yes.
Right. And the entire intention of a filmmaker with those movies is that you kind of have to feed information to the audience and then get them to figure it out the same time the characters figure out, or right before they figure it out. If you're trying to set up a twist or something like that, or like the characters about it really get at some deep stuff, right? Like you're talking about the mom leaving with the kids from the hotel, right? Or the motel.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we already know where they're going. We know what's about to happen. And it's like, you're already set up for that to finally happen. It's like, oh, and that emotional payoff is fantastic.
It's so good.
But talking about the exorcism, let's get into dialogues, because this is one of those movies where it's like there's a lot of there's a lot of exposition dialogue.
Yes.
But it's like, what are your favorite pieces of dialogue? I've got like 3, which is rare for me. I usually have more.
My number one favorite thing is when Ed and Lorraine are talking to each other. I think it's
Yeah.
right after the second like seminar that they're doing, and
Yeah.
she looks at him and goes, "Do you remember what you said to me on our wedding night?" And he
Oh.
goes, "Can we do it again?" That's so good. That is such good banter.
But
Ugh.
talk about Lorraine and Ed. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson have, so like you said, their house is lived in, but I think them as like actors, the
Chemistry.
relationship, yeah, the chemistry's there, but they also feel like they're lived with, and like they've been through this, they've done this a lot, and there's a vibe to them.
Yes.
And they work together well, and you see why. Like Ed is, pretty much the entire movie he's trying to protect his wife the entire time. He's like, I don't want her to go through this stuff. I don't want her to go through this stuff. But by the time they see the mom come to the seminar and then they go to the house, it's like, then I gotta kind of let her do this.
And it's like he can't help but see his family in their family.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's like all the moments of them, like after they come to stay at the house and like he's helping them with the car, like and all
it's so
that sort of
sweet.
stuff. And it's like, well, you don't see, it's like people always talk about like, oh, you need to have movies that are just about the story, and then if there's nothing that's not helping the story, you don't need it in there. But it's like moments like that, they don't necessarily seem like they're plot related. They're 100% plot related, because
Well,
that's when
yeah.
you can tell the information of like, yeah, this happened to my wife. with this exorcism, and she won't even tell me what happened. Like 8 days, she
And
went in
those,
her room and she didn't talk, she didn't eat, she didn't do nothing. It's like the way he sells it is fantastic.
yes, and those moments are so humanizing for those characters.
100%. That's the main
It's
part.
it makes them feel just like people that you know. You feel like you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. We got McDonald's the other day. It's
And
insane.
that's what makes it horrifying. That's what it's like. They're just,
Yeah.
taking that knife and just putting them in your ribs. It's like, oh, like we about to get you with this. And it's like, that's how you do it, man. And man, okay, you have any more dialogues? Because
um,
I would hit one
it's
with Patrick
it's
Wilson in a
it
bit.
happens. It happens right after that one where she looks at him and says, "No, you said that God brought us together for a reason." And I
Oh
think
yeah,
that this is it. I think that helping these people and helping people are it. And that I love their dialogues. I love Ed and Lorraine's dialogues together. They're so good.
and that's why it works. That's the reason why there is a franchise of these
Yeah.
movies. You know how much money this franchise has made, right?
No, what's it at now?
They spent 200 million dollars, and they've made $2 billion.
God,
200 million to $2 billion
that's an insane
because of
turnaround.
the start of this one movie, Conjuring 1, 2, 3. They're making four right now, Annabelle and all those movies, and the Nun movies. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
they've kind of ran it. They're making a lot of these movies. I haven't seen most of them, but still, it's like I commend them for it.
Yeah.
Because this is an original franchise right here, right? They didn't have to make these. They didn't have to make more, but they're making more, and it is compelling. Like Annabelle Creation, that's one I've seen. That one's good. I enjoy that one.
Fair enough. I'm not the biggest Annabelle fan, but
I'm not a big horror. Like I like Chucky because Chucky's fun. Like the Annabelle stuff in this movie works because the opening scene with Annabelle, where they're like, "Oh, we told the spirit
yeah.
that she can move into the doll." I'm like, "You did what?
Yeah.
You let the demon get into the doll? Come
That's
on,
so real.
even the production value of that, where it's like they come home and they just have the doll with a bunch of crayons, and it just has written on there like, "Oh, like I miss you" or whatever on the
Hmm.
piece of paper.
Hmm.
And I'm like, bro, that is so horrifying for no reason.
And then there's that scene with the daughter when she's at the house alone with the Nana,
Bro,
and where Annabelle's in the rocking chair with someone.
she's in the rocking chair with somebody. I'm like, bro, come on.
And what's so interesting is like I believe in that first Annabelle movie,
Yeah,
it's the old version of the original owner, like not the
yeah,
young girls that we saw, but like the older woman that had it
yeah,
before that
yeah.
is revealed to be the person that was in that rocking chair or something like that. It's so
Oh, okay.
interesting the way that they tie
Integrate
everything
everything.
back. Yeah.
So the guy who shot The Conjuring, he's the guy who directed the first Annabelle movie.
Okay.
There's Mortal Kombat Annihilation. If you remember that movie from the '90s, he
Yeah.
directed that.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
No hate, no shade. I'm just,
No,
I'm
no,
just
no,
giving
no
you
shade at
facts.
all.
I'm just giving
Love
you
Mortal
facts.
Kombat movies.
Yeah, but my dialogues, I'm gonna be short and sweet today. I love all the details of like the sci-fi jargon of like demon possession stuff, where it's like infestation, oppression, and possession, and that's what I mean by like that's how you set it up, right? They show the footage and then they pull up the thing and you have it written on the chalkboard. It's like, oh, we're at oppression right now. It's gonna get into
Exactly.
possession soon enough,
That tell you
and
exactly the formula for the movie in the movie, and it's so good.
the other two lines are from Patrick Wilson's character, Ed Warren. Sometimes, or no, I think it's Lorraine that says it's like sometimes getting haunted is like stepping on gum. You take
No,
it with you,
yeah, that's him. He says that.
and it's like that's such. It feels so organic. It just feels like such a movie line, and I'm like, oh, that is true, right? That's the easiest way of explaining it. It's like gum on your shoe. And it's like it's just like you can't leave because this thing is like kind of just sitting with you now, right?
Hmm.
And my favorite line, Bathsheba, I condemn you back to hell. And I'm just like, bro, I'm here. I'm here
Oh
for it. I'm
man,
here
it's
for it.
so hype.
And he's just like sitting there with the cross, doing the whole thing. And I'm just like, okay, that is like that. You saw the whole movie with the juice of him saying that. I'm like, if that line doesn't work, the whole movie doesn't work.
And what a scary name.
Yeah, I was just like Bathsheba. I'm like, that seems almost like an ethnic name. It doesn't even feel. And they bring it back to like the Salem witch trials and all that stuff. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I guess they had real witches. Did you watch The Witch from Robert Eggers?
Oh, Vivitch?
Yeah,
No.
it's good.
I've seen bits of it. It seems interesting. It seems super psychological, which I really like.
It's a slower movie, very much slower movie. But when it picks up and it gets to the third act, you're so invested, and it is truly horrifying. I think
Hell yeah.
it's closer along the lines of Hereditary than
Huh.
anything else, if that makes
Ooh,
sense.
I do like
Yeah,
Hereditary.
yeah. But Hereditary's better, in my opinion. But
You'd be hard
Midsommar
pressed to find horror movies better than Hereditary.
and The Lighthouse is better than The Witch, but Robert Eggers has Nosferatu coming out in December.
That looks like it's gonna
Bro,
be fun.
bro, I'm so ready for it because this is what I mean. When it comes to good horror movies, when the filmmakers work, they really work. But I'm gonna
Yes.
get into that in a minute because
Mhm, mhm.
that's the whole thesis for me today. But let's get into the Layla. So, do you know what the Layla is from? Like
Right.
from
It's
Goodfellas?
yeah, Goodfellas. I couldn't remember the name of the movie. I was like, I know that song.
See, that's the thing. When it comes to songs, I typically learn them from movies. And then I
Mm.
have to go back and then I'll find stuff. Like we are talking about Remember the Titans, and I'm like, I know all these songs. I didn't realize that I knew them, so I'm like adding all these songs because I love these songs that they have in there. You know, that like 60s funky sort of music that they have in there.
Mhm, mhm.
Everything besides Ain't No Mountain High Enough, which everybody knows, I assume, right?
I'd like
But
to think so.
best needle dropper use of score. What is it for you for The
I
Conjuring?
cannot recall the name of the song
That's
because
fine. I have all three of
I
them written down.
it's right at the beginning of the movie, right when we go into the title sequence of The
Yeah.
Conjuring, when we're looking at the house and we're floating all around the property. That score is beautiful and haunting because you're looking at a thing that's supposed to be nice, but the music
True.
is looking at you and being like, it looks nice and it sounds nice, but there's this echo and this dystone like right in the background of that score, and it's hauntingly beautiful. It's real scary sounding.
The piece you're talking about is Time of the Season from the Zombies song. And it is fantastic. Like you said, that's one of my favorites too, because there's only three needle drops in this movie, but that's
Yeah,
the one where I was like, wait, is this from this movie? I don't know. I think I've heard this before, but like, I'm not sure where I've heard
it
it. But
harkens back to like Nightmare on Elm Street almost
yeah,
with the way those movies starts.
it feels like 70s, 80s. That's what it feels like. And it sets the tone correctly.
Mhm.
I do want to
It's
say, when I was researching the Layla, In the Room Where You Sleep is one of the songs. It's from Dead Man's Bones, and
oh,
Dead
I know
Man's
them.
Bones is Ryan Gosling and like his partner. And I was like, wait, I didn't
I was
realize that they put that song in there.
That's awesome.
But yeah, Time of the Season's mine too. But I wanted to take the time to tell you about the guy who did the score for the movie,
Mhm.
Joseph Bashara. Do you know anything about him?
I don't recognize his name too much. I'm not gonna lie.
The reason why I bring him up is the music, the sound in these movies is so crucial. And like you're talking about the Conjuring one, like when the actual like scroll starts happening and we get to this Conjuring title card and the music is just, ugh, it feels icky. It's so good. But the thing is, Joseph Bashara is actually in the movie. Guess what role
Really?
he's playing? He's a bald man in his 40s, but guess what role he's playing?
Oh, he's got to be one of the people like that asks a question at the seminar, right?
Bro, he's Bathsheba. He plays the dude in the red in Insidious. He plays the nun in Conjuring 2 in the Nun movies. That is him. He's playing all those roles.
That's awesome.
And it's like there's a familial aspect to James Wan and his movies, but it's like, bro, could you tell that that's all one person? And I'm
No,
just like, it is so awesome. Like
that's
Joseph Bashar, bro,
phenomenal.
and he's awesome in the movie. Is he not? As Bathsheba?
Yeah, yeah, Bastion was horrifying.
And the nun, bro, the nun, bro, nun is scary.
Don't even get me. Don't even
I
get me
didn't,
started on Valak.
I didn't
Ugh.
watch Nun 1 or 2, but like Conjuring 2, like that was scary.
So the Nun movies, in my opinion, are okay.
Yeah,
I really don't think they're that scary, and I think they're okay. But The Conjuring 2 is
Conjuring
a
2 is
horrifying movie.
a fantastic movie,
Oh,
and it's like Joseph Bashara, unknown MVP, because he just comes in, he's like, I'm gonna just dress up as a woman, I'm gonna dress up as the nun and scare the crap out of you. And he doesn't have any dialogue. He just has to show up and just like exist,
and
just
just
be
be spooky,
scary.
dude. That's the dream.
But that's three. Some people they have one, like Robert Elmer, or not Robert Elm, Robert
uh,
Englund. He's literally just not Edward. Nightmare on Elm Street. What is the dude?
Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger. I'm just sitting here, just like
Or
just
the guy who plays
troping.
the monster from Pan's Labyrinth. You know what I'm talking about?
No. Doug Jones is
Yeah.
another one where it's like he is a chameleon with all that stuff.
Hmm.
And bro, Pan's Labyrinth coming next year, but it's like,
Whew.
yeah, I know it's one of my favorite movies too. But it's
Great
like
movie.
that is I'm just like, oh, you can have people where you don't even notice they're in a movie, but they put in that MVP work in because he is awesome, and obviously he does the music, and it's like only person I've seen that's kind of done that in the horror genre is like John Carpenter, where it's like he's directing and he's doing the
Yeah.
music. He's got two hats in the movie, and they're two really good hats. John Carpenter, man, another
John
goat,
Carpenter is great.
because it's like he did the slasher with Halloween, but then you watch The Thing, and it's like it's horror, but it's like a whole other thing where it's like it's almost there's a horror of the creatures themselves, and then there's a horror of like the distrust between the group of like who's one of them and who's not one of them, right?
It really
It
did start that kind of genre of horror movie too.
or I mean, there was like Invasions of the Body Snatcher, but it wasn't personal per se. Where it's like
Yeah,
anyone could be it, but this one is like they're in the Arctic. There's no one else there. You know everybody there, so it's even more
because
horrifying
like
because you know everybody there.
that feeds into stuff like The Mimic, The
Ooh,
Faculty,
yeah.
those kind of movies.
All
Those
it
really
takes
come
is
in
one good
after.
idea.
Hmm.
That's all it takes, and they do it well. And I'm excited to talk about all those movies because they work. Even Invisible Man, that's a horror, like that's a haunted house movie for half the movie because she's getting scared the
Yeah,
crap out of her mind in the house. A lot of the juice that happens when she's like getting choked in the house is like that's some of the craziest stuff because you can't see it. You're experiencing it with her, and it is horrifying, bro.
yeah, no kidding.
But big ups to Joseph Bashar because the man is just he's awesome. Like, bro, come on. And yeah,
Hell yeah.
I know it takes a lot of work to like get into all the prosthetics and the makeup and all that sort of
Hmm.
stuff, but he does it because he obviously is a horror fan, just like James Wan and all these other people. I don't know if you know, but like there's a lot of people in the Conjuring franchise where it's like they're either writing it or like his wife is one of the people who like co-wrote one of the movies. There's a lot of like almost like
Oh,
family vibes of like there's about 10 or 15 people who are creatively constantly doing work with this franchise and they're obviously all friends. So
oh
it's
wow.
kind of wholesome. It's horrifying work, but it's wholesome.
It ain't much, but it's horrifying.
But, if Joseph Bashar wasn't in this movie, you know who should have been in this movie? Come on, let's recast a role. Come on. I hope you came with a recast because I need you to
I
recast
did.
somebody.
I did come with a recast.
Steven Spielberg says that half the work of directing is when you cast a movie. Who you cast in a movie is half that work. So, director Cole Cooper, who you casted?
I have my one recast,
Only one? Okay.
which
I came with
is
15. No,
I came with the whole cast, which
I
is
came. Officer Brad, I didn't like him in this movie. Let me read.
actually I have two.
Okay.
One is actually serious, and one is just kind of goofy. My actual serious one is I like Patrick Wilson a lot. I think he's a phenomenal actor,
Fantastic.
but I think, hear me out, Owen Wilson.
Wow.
Hmm.
They kind of look the same. They could be
Think about, but
doppelgangers.
think about the comedic relief factor with Owen Wilson, juxtaposing how horrifying this movie is in the grand scheme
I'm
of things.
It's like as long as you can sell the drama of it, I
Yeah.
think he can do it, and I think he can sell the drama of it. It's
Well, I
just
mean, you've
he
seen him
might
in
have to be
The Haunting of Hill
restrained.
House and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Which I mean, that movie is a bit goofy, but
but it's like he can't be Wedding Crashers with it. Where in the sense like
no.
where it's like some movies they kind of just let him roll. Where it's like we're just gonna let Owen Wilson be Owen Wilson, and it works really well. But this is something where it's like you kind of gotta act a little bit more, which you can do. He's always been a good actor, that's for sure. I like Owen Wilson.
And Shannon Cook, Drew Thomas in the movie, the younger guy that works with
Oh yeah, Cook, yeah.
Ed. I kind of would like him to be replaced by young Taylor Lautner.
That would be interesting, actually. I think he's good in the movie because he doesn't really get too much dialogue.
Mm.
But if you wanted Cook to actually pop, you could have somebody like Taylor Lautner, where it's like they've got a bit of more of an aura. like a
Yeah,
bit more of a vibe. Which no discount to Cook is just like, you know, you're playing
he's
like a smaller role, but even he
yeah.
comes back in the second movie, obviously, but they didn't have the budget necessarily for big actors. That's all it was. Like, imagine if they made The Conjuring today and it's like, oh, James Wan is making a new horror movie, then it's like you're gonna get all sorts of great talent in there. That's the thing.
Oh,
Like you, what's the X and Pearl? What's the new one? Maxine.
Maxine.
Bro, the cast list for Maxine is so stacked. You got freaking Giancarlo Esposito, Elizabeth Debicki, Michelle Monaghan. So many like A-list, or in my opinion, like A-list
Mhm.
actors in terms of like talent. And I'm
Looking
like,
at that cast list is like looking at the cast list for Scott Pilgrim. Like,
yeah,
it's
you know, yes,
insane.
yes. And that is that, but that's the thing. It's a small movie, but how do you get that? It's like, when do you get the cloud? But it's like I appreciate like, yeah, Taylor, like a Taylor Lautner, bro,
Yeah, some with a bit more presence.
Kristen Stewart. I'm
Mm.
gonna go with the better actor of the bunch. Think about it. She could pull it off, bro. Have you seen Charlie's Angels?
Bits.
Like the new one, the 2019 one.
Yeah, I've seen some clips from it.
Like the best part about it is Kristen Stewart because she is so good at it. Like she could be James Bond. Like that. Like that's the energy she gives off. She doesn't need to be
That'd
James
be
Bond, but
sick.
like that sort of spiral. Give her $100 million movie, like she would kill it. And
Hell yeah.
they severely need it because she's awesome. But those are your two recasts. Do you have
Yeah,
anything
those are
else?
my two recasts. No, I really like Vera, the actor for
Vera
Laura.
Farmiga. Have you
Like,
seen
she's great.
Bates Motel?
Yes.
Fantastic in that. She's had, obviously she's in The Departed and a bunch of other stuff, but the Bates Motel is where she gets to cook. Bit traumatic that first episode, but after that she's just fantastic. And it's like, oh, this is why Norman went crazy.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But I was watching The Conjuring, and at the end of the movie, they show the photo of Ed and Lorraine at the end of the
Oh,
movie in the family,
yeah.
and I saw Lorraine's face, and I was like, Lorraine Warren. I was like, that looks like Sigourney Weaver. This is not because I just watched Aliens. I wrote it before I watched Aliens. Okay, that's just
Okay.
coincidental. But I was like, Sigourney Weaver as Lorraine. So you need
I'm cool with
someone
that.
kind of close in age to play Ed. And I went through a bunch of different actors, but the one I landed on, Michael Keaton
Let's
as Ed.
go.
So
Let's go.
Michael Keaton and Sigourney Weaver. No, think about it because like they. So first thing, Sigourney Weaver, she has a lot of like mannerisms. She does great acting, and
Right.
you know how when Lorraine's outside by the tree and she, you know, she's like kind of falling over and she's like, you know, physically kind of dealing with the power of the possession and like the presence within the house.
Hmm.
She could do that extremely well. That's what you need to sell. And I think Michael Keaton is a great like chemistry actor, and so is Sigourney. Like, have you seen
Oh, yeah.
Ghostbusters 2?
Yeah.
Not only that, but like obviously in Aliens with Michael Bain from
Mhm.
Terminator, like they have good chemistry, and Keaton and her would just like if they shot this in the 70s, I guess they would probably be the appropriate age, and they
Sure.
could have been awesome. So that being said, since they're the older ones, I wanted to do a new like I guess like a now today sort of vibe. Ed would be Ethan Hawke.
Okay.
You know his daughter Maya Hawke. She's in Stranger Things as the girl that Steve's like his best friend. But yeah, he's fantastic. And Kate Blanchett. Do you know who that
Oh,
is?
yeah, I know who
Yeah,
Kate Blanchett is.
both great actors. And I'm just like, oh, Kate Blanchett. She kind of has the same vibe as Vera Farmiga in this. And I'm like, today, if James Wan made this, I feel like she would totally do this movie. Because she did with Eli Roth, she did Borderlands. We're not going to talk about that, but she did the house with the clocks on the wall. It was kind of like a PG
Ooh.
horror movie. It was
Yeah, yeah,
solid. It
yeah.
wasn't bad. It was
No,
legit
it's not bad at
good.
all.
But it's like if she actually wanted to like veer into actual horror, she could have done this. Like she totally could be Lorraine. Like put her in a Conjuring movie for me, please.
Oh, 100%. Just do one of those CGI things. Just put her in the movie. AI, get on it.
Just AI. Legitimately, I could see it happening. Like James Wan and her definitely could work together at some point. She's worked with Guillermo del Toro. Like,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
true.
that was Nightmare Alley, but even that, she was fantastic in that movie. But it's like they could definitely cook on that vibe. But getting off of casting, do you have any soapbox takes about this movie? Because I I got one. I got a big one. Let him cook.
I feel like this movie does, and don't get me wrong, I adore the pacing of this movie. I feel like it's paced extremely well. I feel like it does rattle on a bit, especially towards the end.
Are you
It's more
talking about like
so,
the ending of the movie itself, or are you talking about just like the last like 20, 30 minutes?
it's kind of like that last 30-40 minutes
Yeah.
where we're cutting back from the exorcism just a lot.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily losing, traction, and we're not really losing urgency. It's just, it almost felt like padding, but don't get me wrong, I think it's great.
I
But
think what it is
yeah,
that once you present so many characters, then you have to kind of keep up with them. So
yeah,
it's like this movie inherently, just from the start, you have an A and a B plot where it's like you're following the family, and then the B plot is Ed and Lorraine. And then by the middle of the movie, both plot lines kind of come together, but they also divide at the same time because Ed and Lorraine still go home. And
which
then
is interesting.
there's a whole tension to that. But then by the end of the movie, like you said, they're almost doing a Nolan intercutting of like two extremely tension filled scenes together.
Mhm.
And it's like you don't necessarily need it. But like you said, if they just had the exorcism itself, bruh, that's the main part. That's the juice.
Because like I get it, because that
That's
whole
why it's
time
like,
the exorcism's going on, Drew is looking for April because she's
yeah,
ran off and hid with the ghost boy.
yeah.
Um,
That's why it's like the when they show and when the father comes home before, and, like from the trucking, and
mhm.
we had the whole situation upstairs with the lady on top of the wardrobe, and then the mom is stuck in the basement, locked in there after the whole
Yeah,
matches clapping thing. That scene works because you're following one of them, and then you're following the other one, and then you have a little bit of intercutting, but it's not too crazy, not as tension filled as what you're talking about.
hmm,
That's why it's like, no, I understand what you're talking about. That's why it's like, I think this movie is extremely good. Like, it's a great movie, but it's not amazing per se. It's a gateway movie. It's not necessarily going over the edge. Not that, I mean, it takes a certain amount of work to go over the edge. And I think they do it here, but it might just be a story thing, honestly. That's all it is.
right, right.
Some stories
And
just they're not they're not gonna go over the edge because you inherently know the story, so it's like you're not necessarily gonna have anything that surprises you, right?
right,
That's why it's like horror movies are almost, I wouldn't call them theme parks. I think all movies, so they say when you have a movie you have like 12 stories, and those narratives are, you can just remake them, and that's just what storytelling is, which facts are facts. But these story, like, you when you go into a horror movie, you pretty much for the most part know what you're getting into. And some of them horror movies, when they have like bad, like audiences don't like them, it's because they've been marketed improperly.
yeah,
Like A24 will be like, oh, got it together a trailer that is so scary, and then the movie is like tepidly paced, slower movie, slow burn movie, and people are like, what is this? I didn't come here for this. What are y'all doing? And it's like, that's a whole other problem.
and it's, horror movies especially have this bad marketing thing to where they'll give away so much
That's my problem.
of themselves.
I
I
stopped
hate
watching
it.
trailers. That's why it's
Same.
like I watched Cuckoo recently. My review of Cuckoo is don't watch a trailer because I didn't
Understood.
watch a trailer. I was so surprised. That movie, it is a slower burn, but Hunter Schafer, bruh, come on. That girl is so talented. She knows what she's doing, and she holds that movie like no one else can. And I'm like, okay, it works. Like, and it's like the horrifying part of that movie is a bit visceral, but
Mhm.
it's awesome. It really is. Like, it's a fun time. I think you'll enjoy it because
Hell yeah.
the filmmaking there is really good too. The movie has a smaller budget than freaking Conjuring. Honestly, it really
Really?
does.
Oh,
It's like a
wow.
$4 or $5 million movie, but like the juice is there. They pack in the juice, and it's emotional. It's got a little family element to it, and we'll talk about it once you watch it. It's
Okay.
awesome. I
Okay. Okay.
recommend it. It's not same thing as this. It doesn't like blow your mind away, but you have such a good
You
time
have
with it,
such a good time.
and that's what
Yeah.
matters. Like, that's why, like, I always argue like a movie you can rewatch is something you're gonna like more than a movie that is just great. Because great movie I can't rewatch is not gonna stick. It will stick with me if it's horrifying, and there's some dramas like that. But I don't want to think about that stuff. You haven't seen Ensembles, right?
No.
That movie, there's something that happens in that movie where you're like, bruh. Like when you think about it, you'll just get goosebumps. It's like that horrifying.
Oh God.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point of my soapbox actually today is that horror movies. Actually, I'm gonna this is a little bit of a soapbox and a Oscars category put together today. We're gonna fuse it today. A little,
Okay.
a little whatever. Have you seen Dragon Ball Z where Trunks and they join together?
The fusion dance.
The fusion.
Yeah,
I'm a fusion this. Put some respect on horror movie names.
that's what I'm
That's all I'm
saying.
saying. Because the craftsmanship, the acting, everything that is behind the screen, in front of the screen, when it's done well, it is so freaking good. Even a middling, like a movie, like a horror movie that's not good, quote unquote, not good, like not like great, has good acting in it. And if they're going to nominate people for biopics and the movies are bad, but the performances are good, then why can't y'all even do that for horror movies? And I'm not even going to talk about bad horror movies. Hereditary, you talk about the mother in that, right? She is fantastic. You talk about the mother in this, Lily Taylor, fantastic. Lupita
Babadook.
Nyong'o, yes, Babadook, fantastic director. She made Nightingale after that, and they're horrifying movies, great performances, and a lot of women they give these fantastic performances, but then y'all don't go and respect them because y'all think that action movies, horror movies, comedy movies, they're genre movies, so they're inherently worse than dramas. Like, bro, what? And it's
I
like y'all, they don't know how to have fun, and it's like they're not the standard. Like, I'm not looking at the
mhm.
Oscars ever to be like, oh, it won an Oscar, so like I have to watch it or something. I'm like, oh, something I love won an Oscar. That's kind of awesome. That's about it.
Yeah. I view, especially when it comes to women in horror movies and getting recognition, I call it the scream queen effect.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people will put women into this category that goes, "Oh, you're not a good actor because you were in a horror movie and all you can do is yell."
Jenna Ortega recently, she's becoming very aligned with horror movies, but I don't know if they call her a scream queen. Have you seen Ready or Not with from Radio Silence? Have you seen that?
No, not yet. I've seen a couple of clips from it from
So
people
Samara
telling me about
Weaving.
it.
So in the Matrix,
Mhm.
Agent Smith. That's Agent Smith's niece.
Oh,
She's
sick.
yeah, but she's a fantastic actress and she's good. She holds just as much. I was just talking about like the other performance of like holding a movie. Samara Weaving and Ready or Not, the whole movie plays on her, just like Hunter Schafer and Cuckoo, and it is so freaking good. You talk about in *Malignant*, the Annabelle Wallis. What is she going through in that movie? Elizabeth, hold up, this is gonna bug me. I forgot her last name from Invisible Man, the Scientologist woman.
Oh God, I need
Oh,
to
there it is.
actually watch the ending of that movie.
So,
I get interrupted watching movies so often.
bro, that's why I watch less, but I watch more now. It's kind of weird. But Elizabeth Moss in The Invisible Man, fantastic performance. Easy could have been nominated and won an Oscar in 2020, but she did not because it's a horror movie. And you
Mhm.
watch, I mean, okay, the craftsmanship on The Conjuring. Like, so I honestly think some of the sound design work should have been nominated. This is the year Gravity came out,
Yeah, are you
but it's
kidding
like
me?
even then, it's like I'm gonna argue it. But it's like there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into making these movies, and I think they've done it better. Like James Wan has made more movies now, and they've done better work. But this is still good work.
I was like with sound design, especially on The Conjuring. So when it comes to the wind sound effects,
Oh yeah,
9 times out of 10, there are voices in them.
yeah.
Like there's some wind, there's like not voices in, but a lot of the time, you hear the wind blowing. There are voices in the wind, and it's horrifying, and you can only kind of barely hear it.
So the movies, I'm gonna talk about the Oscars real quick for that.
Hmm.
Sound editing and sound mixing, they're separate this year. Sound editing won Gravity for that year. Nominees for All Is Lost, good movie. Captain Phillips, The Hobbit, Desolation of Smog, the second one.
That makes
Lone Survivor, and then sound mixing, Gravity won. Captain Phillips, Desolation of Smog, Inside Llewellyn Davis, the singer movie from Coen Brothers, really good. Yeah, and then Lone Survivor. Honestly, take out Lone Survivor, take out Desolation of Smog. You could have put The Conjuring in here, honestly.
The Conjuring definitely could have been in there.
because Gravity is the only other movie in this category where I'm like, the sound is so crucial. This is a great number two movie. Whereas like The Conjuring, without the sound, the movie doesn't work.
No.
I believe that, and that's what I'm saying. Good horror movies, they use the craft properly. You're talking about Jaws, right? They use the sound properly. You don't have that score from John Williams, it ain't working. You don't have the detail of like when Jaws is coming, you have the music, and then when he's not, you don't have it. It's like there's so many details that are being used craft wise, and they don't respect the craft of horror movies, and it pisses me off. Just because y'all gave an Oscar to Jordan Peele for Get Out, it doesn't like make up for everything else. He still made Nope. He still made Us, and there's
God,
great work
us.
even within that. I gotta rewatch Nope. I feel like that movie's gonna hit like a bag of rocks because the first time I saw it, I enjoyed it, but the vibes were off. I don't know. I just had a bad day. I don't know what else to say. It was my birthday.
Fair enough. Oh, you having a bad day on your birthday?
I thought I had a good day, but I saw the movie. I think it was like bad expectations. I thought that the
Oh,
movie was
too
going to
high.
have aliens. No, no, I thought it was going to have aliens, but I didn't know that it was going to be like a vehicle, like alien without like a face or anything like that. And
Oh,
what there is in Nope is so much more horrifying. You've seen Nope, right?
mm. I've seen Us though,
Oh,
and Get
bro, you
Out.
got to watch Nope because
I yeah,
there's one little like 3 minutes of Nope. It is some of the most horrifying stuff I've ever seen in my life. Legitimately as horrifying as like the Exorcist scene in this movie, like that horrifying. And there's not even dialogue. It's just people screaming, and you're gonna be like, bro, Vikash was right. You want to bring up anything else Oscar wise? Ooh,
honestly.
production
Oh,
design. Honestly,
oh no. Okay, so don't get me started on the design of the set for this movie. No, and not an inch of the set of this movie is lost on this movie.
it's not
They
wasted.
work every bit of that house.
Yep. And it's a set. They built the set inside,
It's
and the outside is an exterior. But they made this in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was like, they could have shot this in Savannah. They could have shot this in Georgia, and it would have
yeah.
100% made sense. Like the creepy vibe is just the same vibe.
With the Spanish moss everywhere, it would have worked
Yep.
out real good.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. And the production design, Great Gatsby, American Hustle, Gravity, Her, and 12 Years a Slave. Take out American Hustle. That movie is undeserving of a nom. Like throw in the Conjuring, and I mean it genuinely. I'm not just shilling for the Conjuring. Like the Conjuring deserves it. They're not asking for it. They deserve it. It's like put some respect
I
on
could
this movie.
I could see it still losing to Gatsby, but
Which is funny because Gatsby won.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
I think that might be the only thing in that list that could probably beat The Conjuring if it would come down to production.
when it comes to production, yeah, I like the production design for Her though. That's the other one
Hurt was really good. I don't know,
because
maybe it just wasn't my kind of movie.
I mean it was my kind of movie. 12 Years a Slave is really good too, but it's like hard movie to watch, and production design's really good on that. But it's like I think it's more. It takes a lot more to do those movies, but it's like when you have one set, you got to put a lot of work into that to make sure it works
Yeah,
because they have a lot more haunted house horror movies now, and they're not as good as The Conjuring, bro.
no, they're
Because
not.
the legacy of this movie rarely much goes into that. Like I told you, this franchise, they made a whole franchise off this one movie, this
Yeah,
movie specifically.
that movie is lightning in a bottle. It
And
is.
it's like $2 billion. That's not like out of
That's
horror movies, bro. Like it says
that's
something. It
insane.
says something about audiences that they'll go see horror movies, and number two, that they have made enough goodwill to where people will keep coming to see the movies because they
Yeah,
made sequels and sequels upon sequels and like whatever. Like I told you, the Nun, Annabelle, the main series, like they've made a lot of movies. And I think the Conjuring and Conjuring 2, they're gonna age super well.
I
Like people are
agree.
gonna come. Like it's been 11 years since this movie came out. You can see the effect of the movie, whether anybody gives Conjuring credit or not. This movie has had a significant effect because you talk about legacy. Have you seen how much of James Wan stuff have you seen?
I've seen all Insidiouses, all the Conjuring, a little bit of the like Conjuring universe stuff.
Saw,
Seen Saw. Seen a few Saw movies.
Aquaman.
I did not see Aquaman.
Bro, did you see
Isn't that
Fast
crazy?
7?
I did see Fast 7 and I saw that.
So this is like a little soapbox and a legacy together, but James Wan with Aquaman 1 and 2 is making much better fun movies than most other like 100, 150, $200 million movies. They are so much fun, bro.
He's got a lot of heart.
And that's the thing, there's a lot of heart in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The emotion is fantastic. The second movie is like an adventure movie, and it's Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson in a buddy movie, essentially, and they're hilarious together. The action is obviously fantastic, and the emotions are there too. Bro, I don't know what it is. People liked Aquaman 1, and then on the second, they turned on the second movie, and I'm like, it's the same exact stuff. He didn't make a different movie. He made just as funny, just as stupid, just as corny, just as cheesy, but it is good. It is so good. And I'm like, I don't know what people aren't understanding because they're good movies. I recommend Aquaman 1 and 2 to you because you will have so
Oh
much
yeah.
fun with them. Bro, if you watch Aquaman 1 from the first like little scene, you're going to be like, bro, I don't think I've seen action and camera work like this before. I took my family on Christmas to go see it, and all seven of us, like, bro, it was amazing, unforgettable experience. That's like core memory, and it's recent times it's hard to have those core memories going to the theater.
Yeah.
But some of the actors, Patrick Wilson, man, he's one of the best, right? He's so good as an actor. You know, he directed the most recent Insidious movie, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he directed that. Vera, obviously, she had a Bates Motel. She's obviously in some other stuff too, but awesome actress. Joey King is probably the most massive one. Freaking, have you seen you? Obviously, you've seen Kissing Booth 1 and 2, right? Bro, I haven't seen them either, but good for
No.
her.
No, I have not.
They were joking on like a podcast they did in 2013, like promoting the movie. That like, oh, this girl has more followers than all of the adults in this movie, like James Wan and all these people. And it's like, yeah, it's because she's a star and she's good at what she does. I hope she does more like drama stuff. I'm gonna bring up Mackenzie Foy real quick for legacies. She's the daughter that's like hitting her head on the wardrobe. She's in Breaking Dawn. She's in Twilight, but she's also obviously the girl in Interstellar. And she was like the lead of like not Snow White. What's this Snow White? It was like it's like Snow White in like the Six Realms or something. She was a lead in a
Oh
Disney movie, but I
yeah.
haven't seen it. But it's like good for her. She deserves it. She's a good actress.
Go get that Disney money, girl.
Exactly right. Go
Jeez.
get that check. Get that check.
Chase that bag. You got this.
But you the MVP, mom. Who's the MVP for you for this movie? Because
Obviously, it's James Wan.
it's James Wan. It has to
Yeah,
be James Wan.
it's James Wan. He's great.
But it's like I always talk about it where I'm like, yeah, it could be someone else. There's like I try to argue for other people, but it's like for this movie specifically,
yes,
it's James
it's the
Wan.
director. It's just he sets up these scenes so well.
And it's like, yeah, there's a certain component of like you need the story and all these sorts of elements for it. But the thing that makes this movie work the most is the vision of it. Where it's like he's made other horror movies, but the filmmaking is even better. Like he was talking about, he's like, yeah, people say because of Saw that like I'm the king of torture corn. I'm gonna say corn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And he's like, yeah, sure, that's kind of nice to, have some sort of like name like that, but it's like, it's still not something I wanted. And he was like, I wanted to change the narrative. I made an action movie that didn't do well. And then I made obviously Insidious. And then he made The Conjuring. And he's like, I'm trying to make different movies. And then he's like, yeah, I'm making Fast 7 now. And yeah, like getting a movie like that, there's a lot of politics into like getting a big studio movie, but even like the actors that are with him talking about like The Conjuring, like Lily Taylor, she's like, oh yeah, like, but the difference is going to be that James knows what he's doing. He brings a creativity to his movies and a collaboration where it's like he works with the people that are with him. And the problem is when you get to some of these bigger movies, they'll be like, oh, the producer wants you to do this. The producer doesn't like this. The producer doesn't want this. And that's what ruins some of these movies. They kind of become like cookie cutter because there's other
yeah,
people, trying to like, put their little take into the pot. And it's like you're just putting salt in there. That's just going to make it taste like salt. It's going to taste like bitter nothing. rather than, having a real taste to it. So it's like James Wan, like I said, you've seen Fast 7, but Aquaman 2, Malignant, his recent memory of what he's been doing, he's doing it well, and it's compelling work. He's supposed to be doing. I don't know if you know this. He's writing a Creature of the Black Lagoon remake of some sort.
I did not know that. That's
Which, I mean,
that's exciting.
I do not like that they have to remake every iconic movie. But if it's James Wan, Mike Flanagan's doing The Exorcist now. They're gonna bring something cool to it. It's not necessarily worth their time, but if they take the time to do it, bro, they gon' cook. They gon' cook. Chef in the pot, they gon' cook. Whipping a wrist. Okay, bro, it's been good talking to you about The Conjuring, but
It's been fun.
I need you to put some respect on some more movies though. I want you
Okay.
to give some companion movies for the folks out there when it comes to horror movies or any
Okay.
movies in general that you want to have as a companion movie to this.
So viewing The Conjuring as like a introduction to horror for a lot of people, and
Yeah.
watching it as kind of like your gateway. Some good stuff would be, if you like that kind of movie, go into the first Insidious movie.
Yes.
If you're like, oh, I just like horror now in general, try out something like As Above, So Below.
Ooh, yeah, Scott Derrickson, the one
Hmm.
that's in Paris, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that came out when I was in high school. I
I saw
remember
it in
getting a lot of,
theaters.
yeah, I got a lot of recommendations to go see it in theaters. I think that we watched that in the editing room also, actually. We
It
watched a
was
lot of horror
surprisingly
movies.
good.
Yeah.
Surprisingly good for a found footage movie.
He's the one who made like Doctor Strange and The Black Phone, among some other stuff recently.
If you end up liking more of the cheesiness side of it,
So me.
maybe go down the line of like House of a Thousand Corpses.
I still need to check out The Wailing, the 2016 movie you told me about. I need to check that out.
Oh,
Yeah.
you need to. That's. I'll recommend that too as
Yeah.
like a movie to go with it. That's just like, if you like the serious aspect of that movie, watch The Wailing. That wow,
Yeah.
wow.
You already can tell what mine are. My companion movie is obviously Conjuring 2. You don't
Okay,
need to watch any of the other movies. Just watch The Conjuring 2. You'd be like, oh, this is even better in some
it's
senses.
really good.
It is like you'll see the budget doubles and the production value doubles
And now
right away.
everybody's really like secure in what characters that they're playing, and it's
Yeah.
it's damn good.
And yeah, they start with the Amity Horrorville stuff, but like they hit the tone
Ugh.
right with Conjuring 2. And the other one is obviously Lee Wannell's 2020 Invisible Man, which I will be talking about soon on the pod, hopefully, because the trailer just dropped for The Wolfman. Excited for that. But it's like, it's a serious approach. It's like an upgraded, like contemporary story of like 2020, of like if there was an Invisible Man story and you had to deal with a guy with a futuristic suit, but he's also, keeping his wife prisoner and keeping her sedated essentially, and she escapes. It's like the horrifying tension of that movie never lets up. And me and my dad talk about it all the time. We love The Invisible Man. And that's like those movies you come back to are the ones you fall in love with.
Oh yeah.
And I think horror movies, the ones where they're almost a ride. They're a theme park of sense. Not like a theme park in the sense of like Martin Scorsese talking about Marvel movies, but like a theme park in the sense of like you can rewatch it and the ride of it, the highs and lows of it are so enjoyable that you come back to it. Those are the ones that I love the most out of horror movies.
Yes.
That's why it's like Shaun of the Dead is got comedy, but like the filmmaking, like
It's
Edgar Wright,
fun.
it is so freaking good. 20 years. I think it just had his 20 years anniversary. They
Did it
were just
really?
showing it in theaters. Yeah. But it's like every time I watch that, I'm like, y'all didn't have to put in this much work, but it's like it works so freaking well, man. Anything else about The Conjuring before we turn off all the lights and turn into The Conjuring?
I
The
will
end of this
say.
pod is just I'd leave under your bed, guys.
Don't look in the corner. Just the direction of this movie is inspirational. Obviously, it's inspired a lot that's come after it
Yeah.
with the haunted house genre in general, and it gave horror more of an ability to be a lot more serious and touch on some topics like family issues, a lot of
PTSD.
PTSD,
Yeah,
um, and it
that's
gave the fact that
bro.
horror doesn't have to be in your face all the time.
Hill House. That's perfectly what that is, right?
Exactly,
Where it's like
exactly.
there's a lot of horrifying elements to it. There's like some little jump scares, but like the fundamental is the family story and the tragedy of that family story. And this family story is tragic at times in The Conjuring, but they definitely end on a good note. I feel like if you ended The Conjuring on a bad note of like, something happens to the family and is
It'd be
irreparable
significantly
damage,
worse.
yeah, it wouldn't be a good movie. Where it's like certain movies have to have a good, like, quote unquote good ending and a bad ending in terms of like the story itself, and that'll make it a good ending or a bad ending, like in
Like
terms of the film itself. So it's like
like
two. It's like,
that one ending for Pet Cemetery
okay, I know
where
what you're talking
everybody
about.
dies,
Yeah,
because there's like three endings to that movie.
yeah. That's why it's like, does it work? I
No,
don't know.
that
It,
that one, I
yeah,
didn't like it.
because I always like a happy ending. There's some movies where like La La Land where you get a bittersweet ending. That works for some people, but it's like it depends on how you're writing it. This one needed a good ending though.
So, but you don't always have to have one.
True.
Hereditary.
Yeah, bro. But that's the thing is like you look at the trajectory of that movie where it's like it's the same thing where it's like it's building up, and then it really builds up and really builds up, and hell payment by the end of the movie, right? And that works just as well. It works as it works in this movie. You watch Midsommar, right? Same thing. It's building up. It's building up, and it's like by the end of the movie, you're like, bro, oh my god, like that is horrifying, right? Summer Queen, and it works.
That movie
So
really figured out how to make a pastel palette scary, and I'm still never going to be able to get over it.
that's the thing. That's why I want to talk about that too. Where it's like I always dreamed of that. I was like, can you make a horror movie that is genuinely horrifying that takes place in like the brightest of bright light? And it does, and it does
Yeah.
it well. And I'm just like, oh, like Ari Aster lived my dream. Screw you. But like no, like genuine props to that movie because you talk about filmmaking, right? The filmmaking in The Conjuring is really really good, but you look at Hereditary and you look at Midsommar, the filmmaking is almost perfect. I think it's
Yeah.
perfect for this movie, Conjuring. It's perfect for that movie. But if you talk about like you want to go to like a film class and show them a movie, you got to show them those movies for like, oh, these are contemporary movies. With doesn't matter the genre, but the filmmaking is fantastic at every single. And you talk about the sound in Midsommar. Do you remember the scene where he has to mate with the woman and all the women around him? I'm
Yeah.
saying that in the most PG way possible. The sound of that scene is so horrifying because it's the same thing of the wheezing in The Conjuring where it's like and they're like breathing together. It is messed up. But I'm gonna get off of it. But like
Yeah.
it has been fantastic talking to you about horror
It's been
movies, bro.
wonderful. I've had a good time.
And we're gonna have you come back again, maybe not for a horror movie, but maybe for a horror movie because I really want to talk about The Invisible Man if you're down for that. But we will deal with that later. But peace and love. We will see you all next time.
Peace out.
Bye.